everybody, thanks for joining me here today. This is Nicole with Topaz, and today I am very happy to be here to talk about our new Topaz Simplify 4.1. Today we're going to be talking about exploring all the different artistic possibilities, plus some of the technical uses of Topaz Simplify. Topaz Simplify, if you're unfamiliar with it, is basically the ultimate toolbox to create different types of photo art effects in a very simple and quick manner. It uses a specialized digital art technology of actually removing elements in your image based upon size, allowing you to quickly create things like paintings, sketches, watercolors, cartoons, and more. And there are technical uses that I find are very relevant when it comes to photo restoration and more technical workflows for certain images. So today we're going to talk about the recently released Simplify 4.1, and this is a new and improved user interface and toolbox. There's not any new presets. There's not a whole new, on the right-hand side, there's not a lot of new functionality as far as features go, but the toolbox and the workflow additions that we've added into the program are really awesome. So I'm excited to show you those. And we're going to explore all the different types of looks that I've already talked about. So let me show you a few before and afters just so you can get it into your visually see the different types of things that you can come up with. And if any of these things really interest you, just type them into the questions module and say, hey, Nicole, I want to see how you did that, and we'll cover it more specifically on the workflow at the end during the question and answer session. So this image, let me show you this original image that we're looking at right now of the cherry tree garden. And let's see here, our cherry blossoms here. This is the original image, which is a nice image, but I thought this would look awesome if I did a little bit of a painting effect. We can have some very quick methods of creating oil painting type look effects. So here's what I did there. And then I thought, let me actually look at the different possibilities that I can do in this program. So I also did a different type of more flatter effect. It's almost like a mix between a painterly and cartoon effect. And this is all the ones I'm showing you here today are custom made, but we have presets that'll get you very close to where you might want to go, and then you can customize those. And that's really how I worked with all of these custom made presets or custom made settings as well. Lastly, I took it in and I did a cartoon effect, and we have a lot of line and ink effect possibilities within Simplify as well that aren't as more thoroughly explored as our painterly effects, so I'm excited to show you some of those as well. Let's look at a couple others real quick. Here is the original image for this one, this mountain scene. This is actually just a preset, and it's our Buzz Sim preset, which has an amazing effect. It's really lovely. And then here is an oil painting custom setting that I did. Here is one of my new favorite techniques. It's actually kind of a crayon look, so or coloring book look with heavy lines and really soft textured color coming through. Let me show you that one more time. And then we have a Buzz Sim preset as well. We already looked at this. This also shows off that coloring book effect that I was talking about. Here's before and after. Here we have more of a watercolor effect, which I think can be really quite beautiful. You can get some nice flat, almost translucent effects in this image and blended together with certain features within Photoshop or your host program, you can really start to get some very interesting effects. Now this is just using Topaz Simplify. Here's the before image. And this is the watercolor effect. This is a custom setting. This is more of a Buzz Sim effect, which again is that mix between a more flat look like that watercolor and the oil painting preset. And this is the more painterly oil painting preset. Actually, this isn't a preset, it's custom. But you can see a lot of those textured brush-like strokes start to come out when you're working with that oil painting type effect. The last thing that we'll look at here today is going to be more of a restoration use for Topaz Simplify, and I'll go over this here in just a bit. But with these older images, sometimes if you're restoring them, you'll see a lot of dust and specks and scratches. Topaz Simplify allows you to quickly get rid of all of those, or the majority of them, in a very, very, very simple way, so you don't have to go in and individually select each one in programs like Photoshop, and it just really cuts down a lot of that post-processing with the restoration workflow. So that's the more technical use we'll be covering, but let's go back to this cherry tree image, and we'll start here taking this original background image in. I'm just going to do a quick copy, and we'll go into Filter, Topaz Labs, Topaz Simplify. I am using Photoshop as our base here today. However, if you are interested in knowing the rest of the compatibility programs that or the rest of the host programs that we're compatible with, you can check them out online on our support page. But basically it's Photoshop, Photoshop Elements, Lightroom, Aperture, PaintShop Pro, iPhoto, and most of the major programs like that, also Photo Effects Lab, of course. So here is Simplify 4.1, and it's laid out very similarly to Simplify 4. So we're going to go over the interface super quick here because it does have a ton of consistent layouts that Simplify 4 did. So instead of going over each individual thing, I'll go over just what we've updated. But first, let me just quickly cover the majority, or the basic layout here. Here we have the collections and presets over here on the left. Now our collections are up top, and instead of the preset preview being up top like it was in Simplify 4.0, it's now a flyout preview that will come out to the right as you scroll over it below. And this is a fantastic preset preview just because it's larger, and I think it's much nicer type of flyout look to it. But it is still over here on the left. In the main area, we have our main image preview where you can, let's say we go to BuzzSim Desaturated. There we have it. Now you can go before, after, so you can toggle back and forth between your preview and your original still by using the spacebar or left mouse button. We have our zoom tools up here on the right. Then we have the things like our navigation tools over here on the top right, and all of our adjustments over here on the right hand side. When you're ready to press OK and process the image back into your host program, you just come down here and press OK. So let's take a look at some of the actual updated tools that we have within the program now. Let's start over here on the left hand side. So with the Simplify 4.1, obviously we have a new look. It's become much more modern and clean. We really wanted to clean up a lot of the just visual clutteredness. So this program gets closer to the recently released clarity and restyle type of look, and that's really what we're going with as we update these user interfaces. Over here on the left, we still have our collections, and I believe we had this in 4.1, but if you weren't aware of it, you can add your own collection by coming over to the little gear over here. We had new collection, delete collection, and rename a collection. So you can add your new collection and maybe say my collection, or something. Maybe you want to add a coloring book collection or something like that. You can say OK. And now your collection is added within the collection list. You can also rename that if you decide, you know, I don't like the name of that. And then if you want to delete it, you can delete that as well. You're not able to rename or delete the custom-made presets, or I'm sorry, the default collection names. Those will stay the same, but you can rename, delete, and add custom collections for yourself. Below that, we have our presets, and the preset list will change as you go to different collections. So here we're in our painting collection now, and you can scroll over and you'll see those pop-outs. This is new, the pop-out, the flyout itself. So that's new to the actual interface. One of the coolest things that we have available for you is the new grid view that we're adding to our user interfaces. We now have that for Simplify. So program or collections that have quite a few different looks to them. If you want to view them all at once instead of scrolling over them individually, you can just click on that little grid icon and the grid view will pop up and allow you to see all of the different effects that you can add in this particular collection. And once you find something that you like, you can click on it and it's applied to your main preview and it is processed back into that main interface. Excuse me. Also within the grid preview, you have several different ways to kind of narrow down the looks that you're looking at or search within this particular view. So let's say I'm in this painting collection right now, but I actually want to go to the Buzz Sim collection. I'll just come into my collection selector here and just click my Buzz Sim, and now I'm on the Buzz Sim collection, and that's going to give me a whole different set of looks than my painting collection. Same thing with any of the collections. Here's my line and ink collection. So you get the idea there. But let's say I really like a few of the line and ink collections. So here's my flat 3. I'm going to click on these little snapshot icons. They're little camera icons, and it's kind of just to select your favorites as you view during each particular workflow. So maybe I have a few from the line and ink presets. I can take a look at my snapshots whenever by coming up to this collection drop down and actually clicking on snapshots, and then it'll show the 3 snapshots that I've selected. So I can kind of narrow it down. At times it can kind of get overwhelming in this view to see so many different looks all at once, but it's really nice to kind of narrow it down like that. Even if you go into Buzz Sim and you select a couple in the Buzz Sim, now if I go to my snapshots again, it'll add those particular Buzz Sim presets to the rest of the line and ink presets that I chose prior to that. So that's really nice. The other thing that it allows you to search by, if you have some favorites that you see that you always end up going to, you can select this little star. It's right next to the snapshot, and when you select it, it will turn blue, and that indicates that it's a favorite preset of yours. So let's say the flat 3 and the Buzz Sim toned 3 are my favorites. Now instead of looking at all these different views, I can just say, let me check out my favorites before I do anything else, and it'll just pull up my favorites. Now this little star is something that you can also choose in the main interface as well. I'll show you that. The other way that you can search is through keywords. So let's say I want to maybe look at just my toned preset, so I can say toned, oops, T-O-N-E-D, and anything that has a toned keyword, so you'll see all of these preset names say oil toned in them. You're able to view all of those at once. Let's say I want to look at something like cartoons. So here are my cartoon search, and it pulls up all the different cartoon effects available to look at as well. So you have several ways to search, and that's something that's really cool within this program. You can also look randomly just to kind of get some inspiration if you don't know what you want to do. This little random button over here to the right, it looks like 2 tags attached to each other, and you just click that and it'll randomly pull up a collection of 12 presets for you to take a look at. So very cool stuff there. Back in our main interface, here are the stars that I was talking about for your favorites, so you can select them in either the grid view or this main interface like this. Down in our at the bottom of the presets panel, we still have the ability to save, delete, export, and import our presets. And I see 2 exports. I will see what's going on there, but save, delete, import, and export is still available for you. So if you want to share presets or import presets from somebody who shared them with you, you can use those import and exporting options. You can save your custom-made presets and delete your custom-made presets through this option as well. If you want to take snapshots during this particular view, you can use the snapshot button down here on the lower right. It's no longer located over here on the adjustment menu, but instead on the lower right of the preset panel. It's the little camera icon. So let's press reset and get back into a Buzz Sim preset here. Down here in the menu option, you have several different things that have been added to your preferences panel. You can choose how many items or presets per row in your grid view. Currently there's 4, but if you want to go up to 6 you can, or go down to 3 you can as well. That'll change the size of the presets, and that's nice depending upon the different screen size that you have. We have the ability to turn on and off the enable interactive sliders. You also have the ability to turn on and off those pop-up previews. If you don't use those pop-up previews on a regular basis, then turn this off and your loading time for each individual collection will be much shorter. So if you aren't a preset user, turn that off and you won't miss it. If you are a preset user, keep those on, and it's really fun to just scroll over and see those pop-ups. In the main viewing area, the updates to this particular program, or I'm sorry, to this particular version, let's check it out. We still have the before and after. So before and after split screen view. If you just click on this icon, it's now located over here on the top left, and you can see your before on the left and your after on the right. To go back to the single view, you just click on the single screen. And then to toggle back in between the before and after, just press the space bar or the left mouse button again. Our viewing our zooming tools have been moved to the top right of this main preview window. You can click on the percentage and just go to the percentage that you're looking for. Within Simplify, a very, very important tip to know about is viewing in 100% is the best way to view your image. With anything that's doing a very significant effect like this program or Topaz Clean, where it's really affecting the preview, viewing it at 100% will show you exactly how it's affecting the pixels of your image. If you view it at a smaller percentage, it'll almost seem like the effect is stronger. So I always tell people view it 100% to kind of see how it's the texture really is looking. So you'll know when you process it back to your host program, that's how it's going to look. If you press this little, the little magnifier to the left of the percentage, it will go back to the last used zoom view. So we were at 50% and now it's going to toggle back and forth between 100 and 50%. And if I was looking at this at 200%, it would go back to the 50% as well. So it'll just help you toggle back and forth. If you want to view the image with a different background color, black, white, or whatever, maybe website, host sharing, social site that you might use that has different colors in the background, you want to see how that might look, you can just click on the little background icon, this little light bulb icon here, and you can see it on several different background colors. You can also get rid of these side views by just clicking on the side views here, and you can look at it 100% and really get a nice big view of the image. I'm going to take those back in. There we go. Over here on the right, the things that we've added to the program are going to be the loop. On the top right, it's right next to the navigator. If you just go to the loop, let's say we're looking at this at 50%, and we want to just look at the tree over here on the right at 100%. I'll go into my loop view and just click over there at the tree, and you'll see that right where I clicked is now in this preview over here on the top right at 100%, allowing me to see all the different textures that might not be very evident at a smaller percentage like this. So it's really important within Topaz Simplify, this loop view. We still have our histogram here, which will change as you adjust different levels of your program. You'll see that histogram view change. So if you're really a user who relies on using the histogram to make sure that you're not clipping your highlights or blocking up your shadows, this histogram view might be the right way to work for you. I'm going to go back to the navigator. I'm going to press reset all. Oh, and I think I added a little finishing touch here. Let's get that off. Okay, down here in the lower right, we still have our undo and redo, but instead of being up here, it's down here in the lower right. We still have an apply button. Now, this is a great option for certain types of effects. Basically, the apply button allows you to apply the effects that you're looking at right then, and then it allows you to continue working using that applied image as the new base image. So there are many uses for that within each program. It allows you to continue working without actually having to process the image into your host program and then take the same layer and bring it back in to do a second effect. And within a lot of our programs, we'll have local adjustments such as a brush out effect, where you can brush things out of a certain area, you can smooth or burn or dodge certain areas. So using that apply button to be able to individually apply certain effects to certain areas and continue with the workflow all within the same session is quite nice. So those are all the new tools that we've added to the program. Again, it is a user interface update, so as far as the look and feel go and the workflow as well, and then a new tool set more focused on usability. And I hope that it's something that you'll find to be much more useful to you and allow you to quickly get the looks that you're after. So now let's talk about certain looks that you can achieve very quickly within the program. The first one that we're going to talk about are more painterly effects. Painterly effects, anything from oil paintings, watercolors, all sorts of painterly effects you can get within this program. I like to start off with our different presets a lot of the times. So I will come over here, and if I'm looking for an oil painting, I'll just come down to my oil painting effect, click on it, and see how it applies to my image. Again, I like to look at it at 100% just to kind of really see the texture and the brush stroke capability here. So you can start off with a preset, or you can just immediately come over here to the right. I want to show you both here today. So, and just to show you how quickly and easily you can achieve these types of looks. So you have all of these different presets to start off with, but with an oil painting effect, if you're looking for a more painterly effect that has a lot of brush strokes, let me show you how to quickly achieve that with just using this Simplify module. I'm going to come over here and press Reset All. And if you just play with your Simplify module, you can get some very interesting painterly effects. By default, you're looking at a combined effect, and what that means is that it's showing you both the base image and the edges. If you look at just the base, it's just the color and the texture, and then if you look at just the edges, it really allows for you to create drawings and sketches and hard-edged cartoons very quickly. So we'll go over both of those here in just a bit. But by the combined, I like to look at the combined if I'm just using a painterly effect. And by taking your Simplify size slider up, you'll start to remove the smallest details in your image. And as you continue taking it up, it'll remove larger and larger details. And so if you just move the Simplify size slider, it'll just take away the detail, and you'll get these large patches of tone left over. But if you're wanting to create a more painterly effect that has some more texture to it, it's very easy to do that by adding some feature boost and details. So I like to just, if I'm starting off with a more oil painting type of an effect, I like to go to about 0.2 or 0.3 for my Simplify size, and then take my feature boost up to about 1, 2, or 3 just to see what starts to happen. Now when you are first coming over here to the right-hand side, and just using these top two sliders, as you take your feature boost up, you'll start to see some crazy colors come through, more colorful, saturated areas like you're seeing here. And you can create some really amazing, bright, painterly effects very quickly. But if you're interested in a more natural type of color transition, you just come over to this color space and go down to the YCBCR instead of the RGB, and you'll immediately see a more natural type of color palette that kind of resembles the original image a bit more than the RGB color palette, which will start to give you those kind of brightly saturated areas. So again, to get that kind of textured effect, Simplify size, I like to take about 0.2 to 0.3, feature boost up to about 0.2, and you'll start to see something that almost looks like brush strokes starting to happen. You can determine what details are kept or really seen a little bit more by playing with all of these detail strength, boost, size, removing the small and then removing the weak as well. So if I want to increase my details, I can take my detail strength up, and you'll see a lot more of those details come through. And if I want to boost that up even more and have smaller details come back in, I can do that here. But as you do that, you'll start to see that you are bringing details into flat color spaces, so it starts to look a little odd in certain areas. So you can come in, you can remove the smaller ones, which will start to remove the smaller ones, for example, here in our grass area. You can also tell it which sizes to actually bring back. So if you want it to bring back just the larger sizes of details, you can take this up towards the right. For the smaller details, you can take it back towards the left. And then you can remove the weak details as well and just keep the stronger details. This is really important to know about whenever you're working with portraits and you want to keep details such as eyes and nose and lip detail, but you don't necessarily want to brush out the effect completely. So you can really work with that with your detail options here. With the Simplify 4.0, we actually brought in other features within the tool set over here on the right, including something called dynamics and structure boost. These are awesome tools if you like this more painterly type of an effect. The dynamic will start to really push and pull the overall tonality, so you'll see a lot of your brighter colors start to really get a lot brighter, your darker colors a little bit darker. So here's before, here's after, here's before the dynamic and after the dynamic setting. So you can start to see it really helps kind of separate the tonalities a little bit more. Same thing with the structure and structure boost. One of my favorite workflows with Simplify 3 prior to adding these 3 sliders in was taking the painterly type of effects into Topaz Detail afterwards to really bring out the edges of these kind of textured stroke-like areas. The structure and structure boost will do that within this program. So structure, as you can see, will start to really bring out the heavier lines around each of those patches of color, giving you that brush stroke effect. Structure boost will take it that much further. So it'll go for the very small texture differences on top of the other structure that you've already added. One thing that I like to really work with is actually going down with the structure sometimes to get a whole different type of an effect. This is something that I like to do with cartoon or flat effects as well. But again, with the painterly type of effects, I usually go up a little bit just to really separate those tonalities. Here's before, here's after. And those are the main tools that I find are really necessary when it comes to getting a more painterly effect. The next effect I want to talk about is going into, let's go into Buzz Sim. Buzz Sim is a very unique look that is specific to Topaz Simplify. It's actually based off of an older plugin called, I think it was called Buzz Simplify. And its technology is basically removing size of detail. With the Buzz Sim look, you get kind of a mixture of the painterly but more flat areas instead of having all this texture to it. So just coming in and using the Buzz Sim original preset, you get a really lovely kind of soft effect. It's very unique to Topaz Simplify and something we're known for here. So very cool stuff there. And one thing to know about Buzz Simplify and this type of look is that feature boost, which will create those separation of texture and tonality, is not up. It's all the way at 0. And that's how you get this kind of softer look. You can still work with the details and detail strength to remove certain sizes or bring certain sizes back in, but the most important thing to remember is keeping that feature boost down. And if you want a stronger kind of effect, you can just take that Simplify size slider up itself. And don't forget, if you want more of a natural color versus getting these kind of random patches of color to get that more colorful effect, just take RGB to YCBCR and it'll be a more natural transition. We have all sorts of finishing touches as well, or capabilities of changing this effect. Within the adjust, which we've already looked at, you not only have these dynamic structure and structure boost to really work on the texture, you also have just your standard brightness and contrast sliders, which will help just work with certain tonalities. You can add in saturation, which is a more standard saturation slider, or one of my favorites is saturation boost, which will work more on the less saturated colors and try to bring your less saturated colors up to the same saturation level as your more saturated colors. So you can work on both the regular saturation and the saturation boost to get the type of color effect that you're after. We also have within our finishing touches area ways to add a vignette to the image. So you can, let's go ahead and scroll out to fit view so you can check out the vignette options. You can add a vignette very quickly to the edges using this vignette tool. You could center your vignette exactly wherever you want to go. By default, it's going to be centered on the image, so it'll just be around the outer edges. And you can take the strength way down. You can take it up towards the lighter side, and you can affect the size, transition. You can get all the way to black and all the way to white very easily. So you can get these really nice kind of artistic edges going on with this program as well. That's a lot of fun to work with. We have a lot of people ask, do you have the capability of kind of giving softer edges? And this is how you would do it within the program. We don't actually have a border module within this program to create different types of borders, but you can get this kind of softer effect around the edges. And you can go in either direction of white or black and get some interesting effects. You can also change the curvature to more rounded or square vignettes. One of my favorite things within this program are the toning abilities. Now within Topaz Simplify 4, you can come in and you can do a quad tone effect on a very, very strong level or just barely affecting the image. So here we have 4 different tones affecting the image. That's why it's called a quad tone, because you have 4 choices and you can place it along the different color regions. Just to give you an idea of how it works, if I want to do more of a negative and I want to put my, let me quickly go over just how it works before I do the negative. Basically, you have 4 tones and you can place it on your tonal region scale. Within this first tone, this color 1, it's right now located on 0, and the scale goes from 0 to 255, 0 being black, 255 being white. So right now we have black being on the black side of our scale and white being at 255, so that's where it's located within the image. But let's say I wanted my whites to be in my shadow area, so I just take that down to 0, and I want my blacks to be in my highlight areas. I just take that to 255, and you can start to create almost a negative effect very quickly. So you can just start to imagine the creative possibilities that you have with the addition of a lot of these tools within this tool set on the bottom, within the finishing touches and within the adjust effects as well. So that's just adding on to all the different possibilities that you have within all of these looks that I'm showing you here today. And just to give you an idea, here's Buzz Sim Toned 4 preset. This is going to utilize the Buzz Sim effect within the Simplify module, some of the adjust effects as well, along with the quad tone effect that you see here. If you ever want to change the color, let's say instead of being more of this beige color within your some of the highlights, you actually want to go more towards a green color. You just click on the color swatch itself. It'll pull up a color picker. You can choose, and it will be applied to your image. So that's how quickly you can change that whole effect. So a lot of these presets will utilize all sorts of things. The next effect I want to show you is a watercolor effect. And the watercolor effect, excuse me, I like to personally start off with a watercolor preset because it can kind of be hard to start to achieve the watercolor effect, and we worked pretty hard on giving you some great presets to start off with. And that's going to be in the painting, and you just scroll down or you find the watercolor presets here. So there are 2 watercolor presets. Here's the first one. And you can see it really starts to flatten everything out, and you don't see a ton of edges. So it's a nice place to start, or watercolor 2, which will have a little bit more of a natural color, not as saturated. So we'll start off here in this preset for this watercolor effect, and let's go to 100%. So let's say you've gotten to a watercolor effect or the preset and you say, you know what, this just has too much texture to it still. It doesn't feel like a lot of watercolor. Go to your adjust area and start taking down that structure and the structure boost. And you'll start to blend things together to start to get a little bit more of that softer effect that you can achieve with a watercolor. You can also add in or take out some of the details or add them back in, depending on how you want your watercolor effect to look. And I like to add in edges to my watercolor effects. And excuse me, the way that you can see your edges, and we're going to go on to some sketches and drawing effects here in a second, so this kind of combines that. You can come to your edges area here. And when you're in your edges mode, it's going to show you the edges that are being displayed in your digital art piece that you're creating. So currently in this particular preset, the watercolor 2 preset, edges are not part of this. So if you want to bring out some of those edges, which I like to do sometimes, you can go into that edges mode, go into your edges module below, and you can take your edge strength up. As you take your edge strength up, you'll start to see some of those edges pop out. Now you can choose all different types of edges that we have available for you, such as the color edge, which is going to be more of a sketch effect, color edge fine, which will still be that sketch effect where it'll have larger or heavier lines and softer lines. And you can, the normal will have even heavier lines available, or edges. The color edge fine will take those down a notch. And then the color lines will be a more standardized strength and thickness of the line, so it becomes less of a sketch effect. So I like to stay personally with the color edge or the mono edge. All the mono ones are just going to go towards black, and if you inverse your color, you can actually have white effects as well. So many cool effects here. Going over this very quickly, I know, but I want to cover as much as I can here. So I'm going to go back to the color edge effect. You can take your edge strength up as much as you'd like for a watercolor effect. I like to look at both. So now that I know that I have some edges going, I'm going to go back to my combined mode. And now I can play with my edges while looking at my combined mode, and I'll start to see some of those edges come out and pop out as I take this up. So this edge strength is a little much for me, so I like the edge strength of the majority of it, but I want to simplify it. And we have this simplify slider in the edges module as well, and what that will do is just take down the amount of edges within your edges module, and it is going to be based upon both strength and size. But then you can come down below and actually individually take out or add back in certain edges based upon the weakness or strength with using this reduce weak or reduce small. So as you take both to the right, you'll either reduce the weaker lines or the smaller lines, or you can add them back in by going to the left. So for this watercolor, I'll go ahead and take my reduce small pretty high, and I'm going to take my reduce weak back down. And now I've created a watercolor that has some nice edges, but it's still soft within the actual main body of tone, so nice transitions there. And it blends together really nicely with some stronger edges. So that's kind of the watercolor effect, and you can really play around with all of these again. With the cartoon effect, it's going to be very similar to the watercolor effect, except for me, it's going to have more flat color and more stronger edges. So I'm going to just go into my edges module again and check that out. And I'm going to go to my mono edge normal this time, and I'm going to take my edge strength really, really high. And let's take a look at this at the fit view so you can see this a little bit better. And I'm going to take all of this down So you can see just how many edges this really does have within this program. Now if I look at the combined mode, you can see how jumbled all those edges can get. So that's why the simplify and reduce weak and reduce small are so important. So now that I have my edges there, my edge strength really high, I can come in and start to simplify those edges. If I like the overall simplification, I can then just reduce the weak or reduce the small to really get the effect I'm after with this cartoon effect. And again, with cartoon or line and ink effects, I tend to really have heavier lines and much more flat tones. So whatever you can do to get those more flat tones is great. Within the adjust module, you can take your contrast to the left. You can take your dynamics, your structure, and your structure boost even farther to the left and start to get very flat areas of tone that will start to achieve a more cartoon-like effect. We also have a line and ink preset collection over here on the left-hand side where you can quickly come in and say, okay, I want a cartoon effect. Here's a great place to start. And then you can come over to your edges and say, okay, I don't like what's happening with my edges, so let's go into my edges module and take out some of those larger edges, some of those weaker edges, maybe not fatten them up so much. So you can get very specific cartoon effects, but it's easy to come over here and start off with something that gets you almost to where you want to be, and then you can just work with it a little bit more. The last thing I want to kind of go over with you is more of a sketch effect, and that's just going into your edges effect without staying in the combined or base mode. And again, you can start off with a preset over here. It's going to be in the line and ink area. So if you say, okay, I want more of a sketch effect, actually, I'm sorry, we have a sketch preset collection area. So you can come in and you can see exactly all the different types of sketches or drawing effects that you can get here. So let's see here. Here is you can get colored sketches, or you can just get sketches without color in them, and that's going to be using just the edges module basically. So you can come in and work with that and start off again like we did before with a preset, and then affecting those exactly the way you want it. So a ton of different artistic possibilities. We can't get to all of them today. Before I continue, though, I do want to show you one of my favorite things that I've been starting to play around with, and that is working on my edges module and then coming down to my finishing effects and going into my transparency mode. The transparency mode will blend the effects that you've created back in with the original image. So if you want to get a very kind of pastel effect, you can blend some of that original overall transparency back in and then press apply. Once you've applied it, I'm now starting off with this base image, which I really like. And then if I want to add in some saturation, I can quickly add in saturation that's pulling from that original image and get some very interesting effects as well very quickly. So you can get a very nice tone to your image using that original color, but not necessarily having to sit there and play around with all the colors. You can bring it in through that transparency and then continue working. And that's why that apply button is really great for different types of effects. I do a lot of photo restoration from my family's images. This is an image of my grandfather's that came from, excuse me, some of his old slides, and they had been stored for 30 years. So a lot of the dust and hair that was kind of stuck on that negative film kind of got into the emulsion, and even cleaning it doesn't make it go away. So this is something that people have to struggle with whenever they're working with restoring old images or scanned images that might have some dust on the scanner. And Simplify is a very quick way of getting rid of some of these dust particles. We even have a detail removal and enhancement collection because this is something we really think that is great for this program. So you can start with dust removal 1, And you can just keep an eye on the little dust specks that are happening here and see the dust specks start to disappear as you have a higher strength of dust removal. But the more technical way of looking at it, let's just go over here to the Simplify module. It's actually very simple. You just take the Simplify size slider up, but do it in a very, very minimal way until you start to see those dust particles disappear. And when you start to see those very small dust particles disappear, you might see some extra heavy ones like these pieces of hair or longer things, but you can actually go through your host program to take those out if you choose to do that instead. But look how many pieces of dust were solved just with that Simplify size slider. Here's before and after, and you still have all the major detail, even though this image doesn't have a ton of detail, but it doesn't get any more blurry because we've only removed the very, very small amount of detail within the image. Now, one thing that you might run into, like we are with this program, this image or this film had a lot of natural grain to it. So you see a lot of this color grain, and if you want to keep that, you can easily do that by inversing the whole effect and individually going in and working with these different dust particles and brushing them back in. So if you want to learn more about the more technical uses of the program like this, you can check out some of our restoration workflows on our YouTube website. It's it's youtube.com/Topaz Labs. And we have all different types of Simplify workflows and effects and how-tos on that channel, so you can check that out if you want any further information about anything we've covered here today. So again, if you have any questions that we weren't able to cover, you can contact us at webinars@topazlabs.com, and if you are interested in more Simplify sessions, topazlabs.com/webinars. All right, thanks everybody, and have a great day or morning or afternoon wherever you are, and I hope you're able to join us again. Bye-bye.